Hey guys, welcome back. So today we're going to delve into freezer corn. Yes, I could can it. I could. I don't want to. So we're going to be doing freezer corn. How do you preserve corn from your garden and keep it fresh for later use? Guys, I can't talk today. Yes, you could freeze it in full cobs. Mike is not a big fan of corn on the cob. He prefers it cut off the cob. So I did reserve some of the best looking cobs for tonight's dinner to have corn on the cob for me and the kids, because we gotta at least have some corn on the cob off of our fresh grown stuff, but the rest is getting dehusked, decobbed, and made into freezer corn. We didn't get a crap ton of corn, guys. We got about 24 heads, and unfortunately about 12 of those were deformed, as you would call it. Did you know that each string that goes to your corn, that silk, it actually serves a purpose? Each one fertilizes one kernel. So when the corn starts to be fertilized and the pollen is falling from the plumes, each string will get pollinated. And that will either determine whether you have a kernel or an empty space. So we had about 12 of them that were poorly pollinated. About a quarter to a half of the cob got kernels. The rest were holes. Some of the kernels were monster size because that's what happens sometimes when they don't have pollinated friends. We just had an issue this year with our corn all coming to maturity at different times. This is why you would plant your corn in large groupings, so that they can help each other pollinate each other's corn, because one corn doesn't do well at pollinating itself. But since they all came together at different maturity levels, there were some that were not mature enough that had all their neighbors pollinating, so by the time they became mature, they didn't have enough pollen, or just different reasons. It happens. We got a lot of rain right around the time they all came to maturity as well, so I'm sure that didn't help matters, because it probably washed away some of the pollen that should have been going down to those strands. But it is what it is. We're going to take care of what we got and be grateful for it. You're not going to have all successes in the garden. It's just not going to happen. So let's dive in. Okay guys, so these are the ones I still have to dehusk, decob. I mean, this is basically coming from the deformed ones. That's the corn we got. Not horrible. It's really not horrible for the ones that most farmers would have thrown into the garbage pile. The stores wouldn't sell you that. You're not going to find that in the stores. But it is common, guys. These are the ones I'm keeping. These are really nice ones. Now, if you wanted to freeze them in the husk, you could peel it back and eliminate some of the silk. Get rid of a couple of the leaves. Cut the very top and cut the very bottom. And then just put it in a freezer bag and freeze it. And then you can cook it as you want. That's all you would do. But like I said, Mike isn't a big fan of that. These are going to get cooked tonight, so I'm not messing with those. Save your husks, save your silks, save your cobs. There's things you can do with all of those. Maybe you won't like it, but there are things you can do with all of those. Or you can compost it or feed it to your chickens, or pigs or whatever. But all you're going to do is you're going to take your corn cob and just right along the cob itself, just go down with a knife. Don't want to go too far in because you don't want to end up getting the nasties. But you're just going to basically cut your corn right off the cob. This will be a video series though. I'm going to show you what you can do with all of these items that come with the corn. So it's not going to be in this video that I'll explain that, but there will be more videos to come telling you what to do. I'll try to release them fairly fast in succession, so that way you got that information. So you're gonna save those husks or those cobs like this, guys. That's actually a very pretty corn. This one's not bad, but you can see the little bit of a hole there. That's because of poor pollination. The ones that were already previously cut had massive holes. Like, the whole middle was a hole. They were bad. So, yes, we did get our bad corn. It just happens. And you know, you're gonna have your flaws in your garden. It's just, you're not gonna have a year where nothing goes wrong. It's just not gonna ever happen. So accept that before you plant the garden and rejoice in what you get. Don't dwell too long on the issues that are gonna come up. And problem solve as best you can along the way. I tried to hand pollinate these the best I could. I'm making sure that there's a pollen transfer. But you can't, it's not as easy as a flower pollen transfer to transfer pollen from corn. I knew we were going to have some issues. It was just inevitable when I saw some of them were just not ready when others were. And it didn't help. We tried doing the two sisters, I'm going to say, because we did not plant the squash around it. But we tried to plant the beans with the corn. And yes, it works. They trellis up the corn. But the downfall was, too, I think, is the beans wrapped around the corn, which kind of shaded out their tassels. So some of the pollination, I think, was stunted because of that, too. I could be wrong, but that's just what I think. The reason these are so small, guys, is because when I was taking them out of their husk, I broke them. Instead of losing the little bit of corn that was still at the bottom there, I'm trying to save it. But this is what people look for in the stores, this empty top. The rest of this corn actually looks pretty good. Just because the top is empty doesn't mean the bottom is bad, and vice versa. Your top can be full and beautiful, and you could have a hole right in the center. So, really, unless you peel back the whole husk at the store, you don't know what you're getting. You might be able to feel it if it's really bad, but it's a guessing game. But typically, if they're really bad, they're not going to make it to the store shelf in the first place. And then you got this one. I cut this portion out because it was a little bit squishy. I don't know if I did that when I was husking it, or if it was just kind of a spot that got bad. But it's all good. All my corn stalks, I could have saved and dried them out and used them for Halloween decor. I don't really have a way of displaying those, and I didn't want to. So instead, I contacted a friend that does display corn stalks, usually buys them. And she came and picked them up, and she's going to display them in her yard for Halloween decor. So even that didn't necessarily get wasted. So, not bad. Now we're going to throw that into our bowl of already de-husked and de-cobbed corn. Now for the next step, you're going to prepare your broth, essentially. You need 1.5 cups of water into a stock pot. You need 1 stick of butter. This is for 8 cups of corn. So this is what you're putting in there for 8 cups. You need 1/2 tablespoon of sugar. And 2 teaspoons of salt. Since you're not canning this, you could use any type of salt. I'm still using my canning and pickling salt. This is a 1/2 teaspoon, by the way, guys. That's why I'm doing 4 of them. Now you're going to go ahead and put this on the stove and melt the butter. Dissolve the powders, basically, and then we will come back. So while melting the butter, use a wooden spoon to stir it. Just keep it on like a medium heat just to kind of get everything melted, get everything mixed together before the corn gets added in. I will say this smells amazing already. I also do rinse the corn. I put it in a strainer and I rinse it in some cold water because it does sometimes have a little bit of starchy water in there, so I try to kind of rinse that out so get rid of some of the starchiness. Corn is sweet because it has sugars, but the sugars break down pretty quickly into starch. So, yeah, that's why it gets a little starchy sometimes. But that's almost ready for the corn. Butter is melted. Now we gotta get that corn and put it in. So once you have the corn added into your mixture, you're gonna raise the heat a little bit and bring it up to a boil. Once it's boiling, drop the heat down so it simmers for 5 minutes. This is really an easy process for freezer corn. This is kind of blanching, but at the same time you're putting the flavor in it with that butter and everything else. Guys, this stuff looks pretty good. It smells pretty good too. Trying to knock all that corn in there. Don't want to waste any. But once that's boiling, just drop the heat down. Let it simmer then for 5 minutes. And then you turn off the heat. Then let it sit for about 15 minutes to cool off before you put it into the baggies. Super simple way to save that corn so you can eat it through the winter. If it makes it to there. So guys, this corn is absolutely divine. Smells amazing, tastes just as good. So once it's cooled for that 15 minutes so it's not so extremely hot, you're going to portion this off into bags. I typically do just a small bag, small freezer safe bag. Make sure you're buying the good quality. Get Ziploc or good quality. And then I'm just going to do 1 cup into each bag, roughly. Just scoop out a cup, pour it into your bag. That way, it's not overflowing, and it's not a bad little serving for basically 2 people. Since I do typically feed all of us though, I am going to up my bags this year into 2 cups. Because these bags will fit about 2 cups in there. I'm getting the juice and all, guys, because the juice is the butter and everything else with your corn. So when you reheat it, you'll have your butter. So roughly 2 cups is what I'm doing. And then the fun part is closing it. Since I did put the juices in there, you want these to freeze semi-flat. So I'm closing it 90% of the way. Like most of the way. And then I'm going to lay it flat to kind of get it most of the air out. May not get it all. I'm going to kind of press the air. I don't want the juices to come out though. Then I'll do that. And then you got your freezer corn. Label it, put it in the freezer, let that freeze, and you can eat this later on. That's about what a can size would be, is the 2 cups. I wish I had more corn because this is just not enough. But you're going to take what you get, right? Make sure it's sealed. And just label it. Right, freezer corn, your date, put it in the freezer. This stuff's gonna go. Hopefully this video helped you guys a little bit with what to do with that corn that's coming out of your gardens. One of the many ways of preserving it, one of the many ways you can save it without having to can it. Not everyone wants to have to can things. I like this method. It's easy. It keeps the great flavor, and I usually end up eating a little bit when I make it. So delicious. So guys, Remember, save those other parts of the corn because we're going to have video 2, at least, possibly video 3 coming. What you can do with that stuff if you want to try to use the whole thing. One plant just seems to produce very little for the space in your garden, but it's delicious. Happy preserving, guys. Hope you guys are having an amazing day. Be kind because you don't know what anyone is going through. And we'll catch you on the next one.